Welcome to this episode of the Film Florida podcast. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. I think you're going to enjoy today's episode. Before I introduce you to our guest, I wanted to thank you for downloading this episode of the podcast. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the Film Florida podcast. The better our analytics are, the more likely others will find us. Also, don't forget we have a Film Florida merchandise page. Visit teespring.com/stores/filmflorida to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, and coffee mugs. David Yates is the Executive Director and CEO of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. David joined CMA in 2006, and he was largely responsible for introducing Winter the Dolphin to the world in Dolphin Tail. A short time after that, he introduced us to Hope in Dolphin Tail 2. We talked to David about life for the Clearwater Marine Aquarium before Winter and Hope, CMA's ongoing mission of rescue, rehab, and release, the future of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and the importance of film-induced tourism for Clearwater and Pinellas County. We are thrilled to share the Clearwater Marine Aquarium story with you today, and extremely proud and thankful that CMA is a longtime member of Film Florida. Here's my conversation with David Yates from the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Thanks for spending some time with us today, David.
I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it, John.
So let's start with your origin story. Tell us about young David Yates.
Yeah, well, first of all, that was a long time ago if you're talking about the young David Yates. So I grew up in the Midwest, and my dad was a family practice doctor, a physician, and we kind of bounced around. Born in Texas, spent some years in Oklahoma, a couple years in Oklahoma, Iowa, and then back to Texas. So I kind of bounced around the Midwest. And again, Dad was a physician, as I mentioned, so that we just kind of went wherever he went at that point in time. And my high school years and my freshman year in college in Texas, in West Texas, where they have a lot of dust and heat and wind. And then I spent my college years in Nebraska. I went to University of Nebraska at Omaha and got my business degree, went into accounting, and I thought I'd be a lifetime CPA, but life changed, and, and I did a few other things, so.
In 1989, you were part of a group that purchased the rights to the Ironman triathlon, and people know the brand now, but back then it wasn't as well known until you and your team got involved. Talk about that.
Yeah, that was one of the big career chapters of my life. At the time we bought the company, I was 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. And long story short, the gentleman who was a majority owner and myself and a few of the guys was living in Tarpon Springs, Florida at that time, just north of Clearwater, and the opportunity came up to buy the Ironman company. So Ironman had been around for about 10 years at that time, had been on ABC's Wild World of Sports. People may remember the video of the young lady Julie Moss crawling to the finish line that kind of made it famous. So it was kind of a well-known event, but seen more as kind of a freak show and, just for the really crazy people, lunatics out there that want to do some crazy event like that. Though we saw it as more of a mainstream event that more people could relate to than that. So we bought the company in 1989, came up for sale, and then we began building the Ironman brand and really treated it as a fitness sports brand, and that was the goal. So we didn't change the event. We just saw an opportunity to go out and expand the events around the world, but also expand the storytelling of the event and the great stories every individual had that does an Ironman race. The Ironman's all about overcoming and perseverance and getting the finish line, which, by the way, ironically is the same brand equity as the little dolphin we have here named Winter we'll talk about in a few minutes. But so that's what it was about. So we bought the company and I was there for about 10 years, the CEO the last 6.5 years, and just really enjoyed expanding the Ironman brand around the world. It was just a lot of fun. And the company sold for almost $1 billion a few years ago, so apparently it's done pretty well, I guess.
Yeah. And then in 2006, you were named Director and CEO of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. How did that opportunity present itself?
Yeah, that's a great story. Total surprise. So we raised our kid. We have 4 kids. They're now grown. And in the 90s, we raised our kids coming to CMA, frequently for events and just looking at the animals and we love what CMA did. So kind of a small place, not very well known, kind of run down. And I left Ironman in 1998, did a number of things for 7-8 years, nonprofit consulting, a number of miscellaneous things to kind of keep myself busy, but didn't know what I wanted to do next with my career. So around late 2005, I started thinking, it's time to go out and do something, find another Ironman out there somewhere, do something new. and big if I can. So the board asked me at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, had asked me to do a turnaround. And it was CMA was very much in trouble, not doing well. I was about 3 months away from closing down. Great mission, great cause, but haven't been run very well. So they asked me to do a turnaround. I'm like, do I want to do this or not? Because it just wasn't doing well. It was almost like the way I described it to my wife, I think the first week I began working here was, it's almost like I became the captain of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Do I really want to do this? But I saw a great mission, great cause, and I just fell in love with the work. So I was asked to do a turnaround. I took that, and I started here in February of 2006.
Then Winter the dolphin arrives at CMA. Tell us the story of how you met Winter and how you knew the story was worth telling immediately.
Yeah, actually, Winter arrived almost exactly when I did, believe it or not. So she, while I was interviewing with the board, very providentially, she showed up. So when I got here, she had just arrived. And I'm looking for, at that point in time, I didn't know who she was, knew nothing about her, didn't even know she was here. And matter of fact, when I've been interviewing, walking around the halls of CMA, she was already here, and I didn't know it before I even got hired. So when I started at CMA, I kind of fell back on my Ironman media experience. I dealt with major media worldwide for a number of years, and worked with NBC, ESPN, you name that. So I know a good story when I see it. So I'm looking for a story to tell, and I saw Winter's story and said, that's my story. I mean, I saw that in 5 seconds. When you see a baby dolphin that had nearly died during a rescue, survived, fought through, we were advised to euthanize her the night we got her, we did, and she kept fighting through, then lost her tail, and found new ways to swim. I'm watching this going, you got to be kidding me. And this is just an amazing, amazing story. And when I tell this, it will also tell the world about the work we do at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. So that was a pretty easy story to spot, and I just began telling it.
And did you know that Winter's story would make a great movie? I mean, I know originally you focused on the marketing and the PR side of it. Did you know that it was, feature film worthy, or did someone have to say, hey, this would make a great movie?
No, that's a great question. So when I began seeing Winter's story, and the world's been inspired by her story now, but we were inspired by her in real life. We saw what happened. We watched her. We observed her. We did the caretaking for her. So we saw all this, and I realized that this has the potential, because of what she's done and how she's done this, to really become a global inspirational story, a generational story in that sense. I saw that from day one. I knew it could be that. But then you got to go out and do it, right? So I really had 3 goals at that, 3 primary, what I call storytelling or media goals with Winter's story. And everything I did was designed to impact positively our work at CMA. And that was to have a line of books, at least 1 documentary, and potentially a major motion picture. So I had 3 goals to do those things. So I did the books with Scholastic, and they did very, very well. I did a documentary. I've done 2 now. And I began talking about the movie. And the gentleman I did the Scholastic Winter books with is a well-known business guy, philanthropist. His name is Craig Hatkoff in New York. And he founded Tribeca Film Festival with Robert De Niro and his ex-wife, Jane Rosenthal. So I got to know him to do the books. So about halfway through the books, we're like, hey, should we do a movie? Why not look at a movie now? And of course, Craig and his team did movies. So we had the conversation, but at the same time, one of my NBC Today Show stories on Winter, we had 4 or 5 in the first 2 years, I believe, 2.5 years, just on the Today Show. And that's not mentioning the other media stories. One of my Today Show stories went out, and a gentleman named Richard Ingber, who was the head of marketing at Alcon Entertainment at that time, was sitting in his living room with his wife, watched the story. So while I'm talking to the group in New York about possibly doing a major motion picture on Winter, and he's at least having the conversation, Alcon Entertainment gives me a cold call and said, hey, we saw this story, and we think it'd be a great major motion picture. So I saw from day one the possibility of having a movie. But listen, getting a movie made, getting a movie greenlit, as you know, is 1 in a billion. There's so many great stories out there. And I just had to pitch, and I had to keep the media pre-awareness going to keep Alcon engaged. But, the rest is history. They came on board, and we had, 2 major motion pictures. So.
And before we talk more about Winter and eventually Hope, I want to touch on something that you've mentioned that's really important. Some might listen to this and think, sure, great, Winter has made CMA a lot of money, but she's stuck in captivity. Talk about the overall CMA mission of rescue, rehab, and release, as well as why Winter can't be released back into the wild.
Yeah, great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you watch Dolphin Tale 2, we really stress this message, which is you mentioned the phrase rescue, rehab, and release. That's what we're about. All the major species we have here, dolphins, sea turtles that are kept as residents, are only here because they won't survive back in the wild. And if any animal, we rescue a lot of animals pretty much every day, every week, and the vast majority get back into their natural habitats in the Gulf of Mexico or the ocean on the other side of Florida. So we're about getting animals well. We're an animal hospital in that sense, from that perspective. We get them well, we get them back. If they don't have their survival skills, then they're kept here. In Winter's case, for example, she was rescued when she was about 2.5 months old. Dolphins need, 3 to 5 years to learn how to survive in the wild from their mom. And in addition to that, she lost her tail. So if we put Winter out in the wild, she would not live more than a few hours. She'd be attacked by a shark, probably because she can't get away. She wouldn't know how to hunt. So all the animals that we have, and we only have 4 rescued dolphins here, and all those dolphins are healthy, but they just don't have the ability to survive out in the wild. If they have that, then that's where they go.
So then, in a twist of fate that could really only happen in the movie, except this really did happen, you're finishing the filming of Dolphin Tail, if I understand this correctly, and everyone's at the wrap party, and you get a call that another dolphin that would eventually be known as Hope is on her way to CMA. Talk about that night.
Yeah, John, I tell this story and people still don't believe me, even to this day. So the way this came down is there was not a planned sequel for Dolphin Tale. As you know, there's never been a movie based on real life in Hollywood history that had a sequel ever until Dolphin Tale. Because as you know, if you have a story that's strong enough to be greenlit and is that singular and compelling, you tell it once, it's gone. Matter of fact, our movie partner, Alcon Entertainment, had their most successful movie ever. It was a movie called The Blind Side. You may have heard of. Huge success. Yep. Based on a real life story, but they couldn't have a sequel because the story was told, right? So there was no planned sequel, but I always have hope. I'm a big picture guy. I like to drive a big picture and drive a big vision and shoot for the stars and see what happens. So we're thinking about how do we do this? How do we possibly have a sequel? What can the story be? Now, what I knew is we have a lot of real life things that happen around here that we had not told in Dolphin Tale. So the good news is, despite the fact that we're a marine life, kind of a small to medium sized marine life rescue center in Florida, when you rescue animals and work with sick kids the way we do, you just have a lot of great stories that come up, right? So I knew we had some stories that could be secondary stories supplementing a primary story for a sequel, but I didn't have the big story until, as you mentioned, literally, here's how it came down. Saturday, December 11th, 2010 is the last day of principal photography or filming for Dolphin Tale. So on Saturday, December 11th, 2010, we're going to wrap filming, right? And as you mentioned, we had a wrap party or a going away party at the restaurant just next to us, literally adjacent to our property at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. So about 5 o'clock, I went home. Actually, 4 o'clock, I went home to change clothes for the wrap party. And at 5 o'clock, I get a call from my fellow producer and the line producer, Bob Ingeman, who said, "Hey, Dave, we got the last shot. We're done. We're wrapped." So we're like, woohoo, Dolphin Tail is done. We're wrapped. So at 5 o'clock, we're done, right? Filming after 3 years of prep and writing, we're done filming Dolphin Tail. 10 minutes later, I get a call from my team. This is where it gets nuts. I get a call from my team, and they said there's a baby dolphin being rescued on the east coast of Florida. If it does survive, it's coming to us for rehab. We thought, okay, that's fine. That's what we do. But we rarely get rescues for baby dolphins. They rarely survive even the transport, right? Mm-hmm. So we didn't think she'd survive. But just in case, we got ready to medically intake the dolphin. We got all the medical equipment ready. We got a pool ready. But we went to the restaurant, and we're saying goodbye to Harry Connick and the cast and crew. Then we'd come back and get ready. So for 2 or 3 hours that night, we're literally back and forth between movie, real life. And about 11:15, the van pulls up, and we thought the animal would probably be expired, and we do a necropsy, which is an animal version of an autopsy. We move on. And we open the doors up, and this is what you saw depicted in Dolphin Tale 2. The dolphin's still alive. We run it upstairs. We get it in the water. It survives. And long story short, the dolphin survived through the night, which we didn't think it would do. And that dolphin was the dolphin I named Hope, who was featured in Dolphin Tale 2. And her story, her resulting story of her relationship with Winter was the basis for our second movie, which is the first sequel in Hollywood history for a movie based on real life. So we wrapped Dolphin Tale and get delivered the story the same night for the second movie. Can't believe it.
We talked about what things were like at the Clearwater Marine Aquarium before Winter. Let's talk about now. Did you ever imagine that Dolphin Tale and Dolphin Tale 2 would have had the impact on both CMA and the entire Clearwater area?
Yeah, well, The answer is I did. I think most probably did not. Most people thought I was kind of wasting my time even working on Dolphin Tail in the early days. Like, Dave, it's a Hollywood pipe dream. It's not going to happen. So I was kind of discounted early on that even happening. But when we got to the point of being close to being greenlit, I told our organization, I told the community, I said, guys, you don't know what's coming. This is a major motion picture. It's going to go around the world, 42 countries, and get ready, because I knew what would happen, which is the economic impact it would generate, because it's a movie based on real life. The viewers would be able to come see the star, Winter, the team, myself and our team, the facility we filmed at. All the things you want to make an impact are here. It's a major motion picture situated at a family beach in Florida. So I was pretty clear that it was going to make a big impact, and boy, did it ever.
And talk about some of those numbers. I mean, you know them better than I do in terms of jobs and finances over in the Clearwater area.
Yeah, it really is stunning. I can only say I think it's probably certainly one of the most impactful major motion picture series in the world in history, from an economic impact. And we did multiple studies. We did a study about a year into the movie, and then to look back 4 years later by an independent group called Tourism Economics. And their study showed, you ready for it? It showed over a 4-year period from Dolphin Tail through Dolphin Tail 2, 1 year after that, $2 billion overall economic impact into our area. That's with the B, wow. $2 billion. We support almost 15,000 local jobs today. I don't mean during filming, I mean today. And we generated over that 4-year period, which is very important for our area in tourism, almost around 2 million room nights. And that's 2 million room nights. That's 500,000 room nights that the movies generated into our area in a 4-year period, 500,000 per year, 2 million over 4 years. So it was just and we got it confirmed twice. So we had the original forecast study done about a year after Dolphin Tail came, and then this study was to look back, and they both matched up very, very close. So it's been a stunning. You talk to anybody in the Clearwater, Tampa Bay area about Dolphin Tail, and they'll light up because they know what it's done for the area and continues to do for the area.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we were just over there in the summer of 2019, and there's construction and building, not necessarily at CMA, but just around the area. You can see hotels going up, restaurants, and a lot of that ties back to the interest of the aquarium, correct?
It does. I'm sitting in my office right now looking out the window to a crane building a hotel just across the water from me right now, as an example. And at CMA, at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, we're actually doing a major expansion right now, an $80 million expansion. It is largely due to the impact of the movie. So, the bottom line is when you have, when films and TV shows like this go out and go around the world, especially when they have some kind of a tourism angle to it, it's amazing what can happen, and we're seeing it here on an ongoing basis. We got funding from the state multiple years in a row, and former Governor Scott, now Senator Rick Scott, was a big fan, came here many times because he saw the impact on two things: ROI and jobs. He saw ROI and jobs, and that's what Dolphin Tail has generated and continues to generate.
And somehow, some way, there are still people that don't believe in film-induced tourism. No matter how many studies are done or articles are published, or in your case, real case studies that are referenced. Talk about a world where Dolphin Tail and Dolphin Tail 2 are never made. What does that world look like for CMA, Clearwater, and Pinellas County?
Yeah, so I would say this. Anybody who does not believe in the incredible long-term impact, economic impact of filmmaking, movies and TVs, have them call me. I'll be glad to have that conversation. It is what it is. It's the facts are here. And in our case, I'll give an example. Let me talk about Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and this is indicative of what's happened to our area. Clearwater Beach has been ranked the #1 beach in the country the last 2 years by TripAdvisor, and that's no coincidence because the whole world's seen, when you promote a beach area, promotion works. So during this run-up of Dolphin Tail 2, the tourism at Clearwater Beach has just mushroomed. Hotels, as you mentioned, just being built. We had like 7 or 8 large cranes at one point building hotels. In our case, I'll give an example. Our attendance at Clearwater Marine Aquarium in 2006, which is the year right when I started, was about 76,000 people for the entire year. Okay. So our attendance, 76,000. the year after Dolphin Tail 2 came out, we were 800,000 people.
Wow.
That's tenfold, and our studies show the majority of those that came to see us came from outside the area and outside the state into the area to come see us. So this really has been just a phenomenal example of how it's called movie-induced or film-induced tourism actually works. It's real life. It's not theoretical. We're seeing it here today, and it continues to go on and will go on for many, many decades.
Well, and when you talk about attendance right after Dolphin Tale came out, that wasn't a one-hit wonder in terms of attendance for 1 year. Are you at liberty to say generally what you guys are at annually now?
Yeah. We're actually, we settled down below that, but we're around 600,000 guests per year right now, from 76 to 600,000 post-movie, and actually going up again right now. And by the way, we're in a very small facility in Clearwater Beach. So we're relatively small facility-wise. Now we're expanding right now, and because the movies, we've funded an $80 million expansion of our project. It will take our attendance to well over 1 million people. So this is all fueled by and started by, media storytelling, and then, of course, the movies.
And the films both benefited from the old film tax credit program and supported by the Florida legislature. Do either of those films get made if the support from the state legislature isn't there?
No. These films would not have been made emphatically without the support of the state. And what happened is, in very providential timing, we were up for a green light around May and June of 2010 for Dolphin Tail. And thankfully, the legislature, as you know, passed the jobs bill, which included film incentives that Governor Christ at that time signed. So literally, right during my possible green light window, we got film incentives. Without that, it would not have happened, and Dolphin Tail would have not happened either. And we got both film incentives in a grant from the state to do that. So, emphatically, this multi-billion-dollar impact that's ongoing today will keep going on for decades and decades and decades. Absolutely would not have happened without film incentives and state support. It's just that clear.
And you haven't stopped making media since Dolphin Tale 2, even though that was a number of years ago. What else are you involved with now from a media standpoint for CMA?
Yes, well, we keep telling the story. So the same thing that we did when, as I mentioned before, we've always had a very extensive media campaign telling our stories about the animals we rescue. We do a lot of work with Make-A-Wish type kids, and the Dolphin Tail movies have become, in winter itself, has become a generational story, inspiring many, many kids going through very serious life challenges in hospital beds, you name it, Make-A-Wish kids that we work with. So we always tell these stories. We keep telling the stories in the media from an earned media perspective. We're also working on likely a couple of TV shows. And we're working on the possibility of having an animated TV show concept as a spinoff to Dolphin Tale. And then likely a real-life series. It would, again, be real life. So, we just want to keep telling the stories and keep the content going. And again, it all goes back to the movies. And the media led the movies. The movies have led to all the success we're having today, and all the success we'll continue to have in the upcoming years.
David, you've mentioned it a little bit in passing, but I want you to talk more about your involvement with kids.
Yeah, so winter has, again, become an amazingly, I use the phrase, generational inspiring story. And when I first began telling our story, we started getting letters and emails and calls and visits from families with kids. And these are not children having a bad hair day or just having a bad day with their homework. These are kids in hospital beds, having cystic fibrosis, having cancer, getting prosthetic legs, on the autism spectrum, burn survivors, you name it, across the board. We started getting all these letters and contacts because Winter's overcoming story, but she refused to give. These kids just connected to her in a really amazing way. Dolphin Tail comes out. The first weekend, opening weekend for Dolphin Tail in September 2011, we got 10,000 emails, John, in one weekend.
Wow.
And they were mostly stories like this. And again, these are really tough stories. These are Make-A-Wish kids. These are kids in hospital beds around the world. We now have a whole, what we call, Inspire department at CMA here, where we work with dozens and dozens of kids every day. And we've had hundreds of thousands of emails and calls and letters. Nothing like this. There's nothing like this in the world where, and I can walk around any day at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and I'll find you 20 to 30 families with a story like that, with their child. And I can tell you stories for days about these kids and what happens. And these are kids, again, in really tough situations that just connected to Winter's story, and they needed that connection. They needed that hope. We have kids on the autism spectrum we work with every day, where winter's kind of their first connection in real life. It turns their life around. We work with wounded soldiers. So beyond the business aspect of films and the clear economic success the Dolphin Tail movies have been to our area and to Florida in general, as supported by the state, the life change is nothing like that. And we got all the actors back for Dolphin Tale 2. And the reason we got them all back was, and that's hard to do, this was not a planned sequel, as I mentioned. So they all came back. And Morgan came back, and Harry Connick, and Ashley Judd, Chris Christopherson, they all came back. And I saw Harry on the set the first day down in Fort DeSoto filming. I'm like, Harry, how are you doing this? Because I knew he was doing American Idol at that time. He was also on tour in support of his CD he released at that time. I said, how do you have time for this? His comment was, we wouldn't miss this. So, and Ashley talked about this. Ashley Judd did, and Morgan Freeman did this. We as actors love to do movies, and that's our life, and the money's great, fantastic, but we love to do films that make an impact in society, and that's what the movies did, and they continue to do that today.
And those stories from those kids are truly inspiring. It's great to see those and read more about those. Yeah.
You bet. Yeah, and they're frankly they're so compelling. When I hang up the phone from you today, I walk out and I deal with some families we're working with today. So it's just one of those things that when you get up in the morning and you get to, in my case, oversee a team that rescues marine life, be involved in filmmaking and change the lives of kids and the wounded soldiers we work with. There's nothing better than that. And it all goes back to the movies. The movies just gave us that platform to do this.
And David, if people want to learn more about you, Winter, Hope, and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, where do they go?
Yeah, our website is seewinter.com. That's the word see, so S-E-E, winter.com. Go to that. It has everything we do. It talks about our educational work, our conservation work, our research work. We're involved in projects in Belize and Cuba. We're doing right well surveys up and down the east coast of Florida. So we do a lot of work even outside the four walls of CMA, but they can go to seewinter.com and find all about us.
David, thanks so much for being on the podcast today, and thank you for your continued support of Film Florida and the entire film and television industry here in the state.
Well, John, thank you. Look forward to great years for Film Florida and the film industry in our state. Florida is a great place to film. We want as much filming here as we can, so glad to be involved. Appreciate that.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org and visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at teespring.com/stores/filmflorida, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.